Lesson 1-2B, we're going to compare and order rational numbers. For example 1, compare the numbers. We're going to write less than, greater than, or equal in the blank between the numbers. 0.07 compared to 0.007. This is the easiest way to compare numbers, is to look at decimal places. And so I start comparing in the same decimal places and see where they differ. So I start here behind the decimal. I had 0 point something on both of them, so I can move behind the decimal and I get 0 on both. So I can go on out to the hundredths place, and I have 0.07 compared to 0.00. Well, 7 is larger than 0, so 0.07 is greater than 0.007. B part, we're comparing fractions. And when I'm comparing fractions, I could change them both to decimals. However, I notice in this problem that I've got a negative compared to a positive. What's going to be smaller? The negative. So the negative 4/5 is less than positive 1/3. Now you could have changed them to decimals and compared, but it just wasn't necessary on this problem. For C part, we have 7% compared to the decimal 0.07. So when we're comparing, it would be easiest to look at them both as decimals. So let's change 7% to a decimal. If you don't see the decimal, it's behind the 7. And we're going to move 2 places left to go back to a decimal. 1, 2. So I need to fill in with a 0 as a placeholder. So I get 0.07 compared to 0.07. These are actually the same number, so they're equal, they're equivalent. For part D, we're comparing 31% to the fraction 4/10. It's easiest to change them all to decimals to compare. So 31%, if I don't see the decimal, it's behind the last digit. And I'm going to move it 2 places left. So I get 0.31 compared to 4/10. If we said 4 divided by 10, we'd get the decimal 0.4. Or you'd also notice, since the denominator was a power of 10, it's in tenths place, that you could have written your decimal that way as well. And then compare place values. 0.3 to 0.4 is less than 0.4. I could have actually wrote a 0 behind the 4. I could always add zeros behind the last digit after a decimal. And I could have thought, okay, 31 is less than 40. So I could have approached it that way. Example 2, now we're going to order the numbers from least to greatest. For part A, we have 3, 3%, and 3/10. So I'm going to start by changing them all into decimal form. The number 3 is in a standard form, which is the decimal value. It's just 3. 3%, remember if you didn't see a decimal, it's behind the number, and move it 2 places left. So we get 0.03. And then 3/10 as a decimal, you'd say 3 divided by 10, which is 0.3. So I could compare these. The smallest number, 0.03, was 3%, so I'll write my original number first. 3% was the smallest, then 0.3, as in 0.30, 3/10. So my original number was 3/10, and then the largest of these was the number 3. So these are in order from least to greatest. B part, we have negative numbers. Negative 4/7, negative 47%, and negative 0.53. So we'll start this like we did with positive numbers. We'll change them all to decimals. Negative 4/7, when I divide in a calculator, is going to give me a decimal that goes all the way across my screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and round it to negative 0.57. It actually keeps on going, but we only need a couple decimal places to compare. The negative 47%, The decimal would be after the number if we don't see a decimal, so we move 2 places left, and we get negative 0.47. And the negative 0.53 is already in decimal value. So to go from least to greatest, let's compare. We have negative 0.57, negative 0.47, and negative 0.53. If I were looking at positive numbers, my smallest number would be 0.47. But since these are negatives, it's actually the number that's closest to 0 on a number line, so it's the largest number. So I kind of have to think backwards about negatives. The one that seems to be the furthest from 0, if we were looking at positive numbers, would be 0.57. And since it's a negative, it is the furthest from 0, but that would make it the smallest number. So negative 0.57, which was negative 4/7, is the smallest number. Then negative 0.53, and that's how it started originally, would be the middle number. And then negative 0.47 was the largest of these, and as its original number, it was negative 47%. So these numbers are now in order from least to greatest.